Welcome to Screens of the Stone Age, the podcast where scientists review movies about prehistoric people. My name is Josh Lindell. I'm a grad student studying Neanderthal teeth, and I'm here with...
I'm Dr. Kimberly Plump. I am a bioarchaeologist. I study the human skeleton, health and disease, and evolution.
And I'm Dr. Ross Barnett, a paleogeneticist interested in the phylogeny of felids and Pleistocene extinctions.
And today we are doing our first episode of 2025. It's not 2025 as we're recording this, but it will be 2025 when this episode comes out. For our first episode of the year, we're going to review the pilot episode of the TV series La Brea, which had 3 seasons starting, I believe, in 2021. So who wants to summarize this episode for us?
I do.
Okay.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, appropriately for the time-traveling intro that you gave us, Josh, this is a series about time travel as well. Anyway, yeah, so La Brea, it opens up on LA. We get some kind of nice establishing shots, lots of cars. That's very LA. We see the tar pits, so the famous life-size models of Columbian mammoths that are kind of mired in the tar, in an active tar pit that's still there, just outside the George C. Page Museum. And we kind of zoom in onto a mum with 2 kids in her car, stuck in traffic on the LA freeway. And we very quickly get some establishing background. So the boy is a smart arse, the girl has 1 leg, the mum is divorced, and that's all the information I think we need about them at this moment in time. But then, while they're complaining about the traffic, cracks start to form in the road, in the pavement, and basically, you know, the ground opens up and a massive sinkhole forms, swallowing traffic wardens, policemen, cars, everything. So the mom has to go and do a kind of fast reverse in the car. She's panicking. They kind of scream away from the rapidly expanding hole in the ground in their car. And buildings are starting to collapse. So it's not just like your regular sinkhole. This is a huge sinkhole that's opening up. And then they abandon the car because obviously they've crashed into a whole bunch of other cars. They jump out, run, and then they get split up. So the boy, who's the smart arse, stopped to try and help a little girl who's fallen over and is crying for her mum in a kind of classic cliche sort of way. And while he's doing that, his mum and his sister don't give 2 shits about him. They're still running forward, not notice that he's been left behind. He helps the girl up, but then he gets knocked out by a guy. So he's just there kind of with carnage all around. So that's not good. And then the sinkhole's getting bigger and bigger, and the son essentially falls in, and the mum falls in too as she kind of realizes that he's behind them. She goes back to get him. She kind of falls in as well, but then just at the very last second, cliffhanger style, the girl grabs the mum's arm, and she's the only thing that's preventing her from falling into this enormous sinkhole, which seems to be bottomless. And then we have the kind of classic, which we've seen in several films that we've watched, I guess most famously in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. We have this kind of conversation about, you have to drop me, I'll be holding you back, that kind of stuff. And so this mum basically kind of claws her own hand away from her daughter because she wants to die, I think. I mean, it wouldn't have been that difficult for her to get dragged up, but I guess the plot wouldn't move on without that. So that's her sacrificing herself. The girl runs, and then we flash to another character who's just a dude in a car, but he has weird flashbacks in a very kind of, I mean, this pilot was so American. I was saying to Josh earlier, it's just like it's just, you know, 12 pounds of cliche in a 10-pound bag. They've just stuffed everything in there. So you've got the mysterious dude with the kind of psychic flashbacks, and we see one of his kind of visions, and it's of giant kind of condor-like animals flying overboard, and that's a bit weird. And then his phone rings, and it's the girl whose name is Izzy, the one with a prosthetic leg. And so we find out that this mysterious guy is actually her dad. He's the other half of the divorced parents. And she kind of frantically tells him that the mum and brother have fallen into the sinkhole. We've also seen that the dad is a kind of, used to be a very top-notch army pilot, some kind of armed forces pilot, and then he had a crash, and that's what triggered his crazy visions, and they had to kind of sack him, essentially, and now he's kind of wanting another job. Anyway, so while this is going on, we're getting these introductions, and you never would have guessed it, while Izzy's standing beside the sinkhole, the exact same thing that happened in the dad's vision happens. So we see these kind of condor-like birds fly overhead out of the sinkhole, which is a bit weird since condors and vultures don't tend to nest underground. So that's a bit weird. But yeah, so the mum and the son have fallen into the sinkhole, but they're not like lying in a mangled heap at the bottom. They've passed through some kind of crack in our dimension, sort of Twilight Zone style. They've fallen through the scary door and have landed in a kind of lush green region with a whole bunch of other people and cars and buildings and stuff. The first person they meet is a guy with a gun. Obviously, this is America. Who appears to be English, though, weirdly. He has an English accent. Anyway, so they're kind of a bit kind of confused. They don't know where they are. They don't know what's going on. But they've at least found a guy with a gun. And then they spot some smoke in the distance, so they travel towards that. That's a good survival tip. Move towards the fire. Probably be other people there. They find the son, who's called Josh, I think. And they meet a whole bunch of other people who've fallen through this kind of wormhole / crack in our dimension / whatever sinkhole. And there's a whole bunch of kind of stock characters there. There's a guy that's laughing hysterically. There's a nice gay couple. There's a hard-ass woman who turns out to be a cop. There's a dad and a daughter who seem to be like preppers. They're very kind of prepared and no nonsense. And yeah, I mean, it just kind of throws the cliches one after the other here. We see that the hard-ass woman who's a cop has been trying to hide protein bars because they're stuck in the middle of nowhere and there's all these cars. They've been searching for food. But the cop lady does want to play by the rules. She's trying to hide her protein bars, but she gets spotted by Josh, the son, and they have an argument, and the mum gets involved because Josh is a whiny little bitch and he needs his mum to fight his battles for him. They also find a car that has about 20 kilos worth of heroin in it. I guess that's fairly standard for LA, I guess. Yeah, that's and then out of nowhere, big CGI wolf appears, enormous. Eats one guy, of course. Guy with the gun shoots at them. Josh gets hurt. He gets a tiny little bite on his side, which produces like a couple of milliliters of blood. But it's a big sore, and so he kind of screams and acts for all he's worth. And he's about to die from one very superficial wound to his side. And then we have the action dad, the prepper. He takes charge, puts them into an upside-down bus. My notes here say Josh is a little bitch. He just continues to lie on the floor, like screaming and writhing, and really kind of, I know, unless the bites from this wolf have, like, I don't know, strychnine or something in them, then he's not in any danger, but it feels like he is. And the dad says, "Oh, they need to get antibiotics. I saw an ambulance. Let's go and search for that." Cut back to normal LA, and the dad, whose name isn't important, but the army have sort of set up a cordon around the sinkhole, and they seem to know a lot more about what's going on. They've got like high-tech equipment showing the picture of the crack. They've got drones that they send into it. They seem to have kind of a bit more insider information, which suggests that the army might be behind all this nonsense. What else? Oh yeah, we get some more kind of cliche interaction between the prepper dad and his daughter. He leaves Josh in the daughter's care because you're doing pre-med. This should be easy. Because obviously that's what they teach how to deal with wolf bites and pre-med. But anyway, she hasn't. She's dropped pre-med, she's probably gone to study, I don't know, advanced barista studies or something. And this is hugely problematic for the dad. Oh no, she's doing something that I didn't want her to do. Anyway, I mean, it's all over the place. It cuts between all these different scenes. And so the next thing is there's the mum and the guy with the gun with the English accent are in the woods. The guy with the English accent is about to shoot himself because that's clearly a sensible option when you're in woods we don't know where and you've got a gun. I mean, a lot of this makes no sense. But the mum and the kind of prepper dad talk him down. They find the ambulance. My son is dying is shouted, as you know, classic cliche talk. The dad, whose name is now mentioned, he's called Gavin. He has visions of the drone that the army sent into the crack in the universe, and his visions are so accurate that he can read the number on the tail of the drone, which he then uses to when he talks to the army people who are kind of at the site of the sinkhole and says, did you send a drone in and was it number NN0008? And they're like, oh my God, how did he get that information? Which was ridiculous. Yeah, and then we get the names of some people. We meet Eve, who's the mum. That's her name. I guess that's a bit of foreshadowing. How many people have we seen in all of the things we watched who are called Eve? Way more than I've ever met in real life, sure. Anyway. We Ty, who's a shrink. They talk about their kids, and we have some more kind of classic soap drama in that Eve says, I'm a terrible mother. Once I went out and left them with a certified babysitter or something, and they had a car crash, and that's why Izzy doesn't have a leg. I mean, fuck's sake, as a parent, you know, if you're not just abandoning your kids in front of a telly with you know, a tin opener and some cans of beans, then you're doing all right. We cut back to Josh, and Josh is so cold. He's so cold because he's dying because he got like that tiny bite, and so the daughter who dumped pre-med clearly fairly early on decides to lie on this guy who has lacerations to his abdomen to keep him warm. But she's a hot teenage girl. He's a hot teenage boy, and so it's all okay. We cut back to Gavin. He has had more visions. This time he's had visions of Eve somewhere green beside a stone which had a carved hand on it. And this is something that we'd seen earlier when she first arrived in wherever they are. And he was like, I've seen that stone before. And he's going through photos like an absolute madman, trying to find these stones. And everyone thinks he's crazy because he clearly is. But then he finds a picture of the exact same stone on, you know, some boulevard in LA. So he's like, what's going on here? And so he disappears off in his truck. He starts digging beside the stone because he thinks that, I don't know, what is his thought process here? He's crazy. He's having he's like having fully immersive visions. He's had a plane crash. The guy is off his nut. But anyway, because this is, you know, Hollywood and this is a TV series and it's drama, he's digging and digging and he digs up. Oh my God, it's Eve's ring, which he'd lost before, which is somehow under, you know, 10 foot of sediment, which he's dug in about 20 minutes. So something a bit timey-wimey is going on here. Somehow Eve's ring is there, buried in the past. What else? Oh yeah. We get some updates from the army. They found one of those condor birds that was killed, probably shot by a Los Angelino. But it's a Terratornis merriami, which has been extinct for 12,000 years. So again, time travel stuff's going on. There's actually quite a interesting, considering how crap the rest of it is, quite an interesting little bit here where when Eve and the guy with the gun and the prepper dad find the ambulance, the LA ambulance has an outline of the Hollywood Hills on it, I guess. And they're looking at it and they realize that the hills in the background, which have no skyscrapers or anything on them, it's just forest. It's the same outline as the Hollywood Hills on the ambulance. So like, are we somehow in Hollywood land? What's going on? I mean, obviously over 10,000 years, a lot would have changed, but it shows a little bit of thought on the side of the writers. Anyway, so while they're getting the essential antibiotics so that Josh doesn't die, somebody gets a flare gun from the ambulance, which is something they carry in America probably, and shoots it. And when they do that, oh my god, a saber-tooth appears and threatens them, and now they have to run. And that's the cliffhanger ending. And then we get a few kind of shots of exciting things that are going to happen later in the series, which includes more CGI wolves, a giant ground sloth, very badly CGI'd. I mean, the giant sloths from Walking with Beasts, which is more than 20 years old, look better than this one. But yeah, if you like that sort of thing, I'm sure it's great, but it didn't do anything for me.
I can't believe it has 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Well, the 3rd season is half as long as it was supposed to be because they canceled it after 3 seasons. They had to buy out the actors' contracts because they had contracts for a 3rd season, and they cut it down from 10 episodes to 6 or something like that.
I'm not surprised. I mean, clearly, yeah, I don't know who this is aimed at. Grands, people with no job to watch. I don't know, because it was just dreadful.
Well, it came out during the pandemic, so nobody had a job and everybody could watch it.
Well, there you go. Maybe that's how it actually made it to 2.5 seasons.
So in this episode, it's a pilot. It sets up a lot of stuff. It sets up a lot of mystery. I watched ahead a few episodes to make sure I had a little bit more context. I didn't watch the whole series. I think I watched up to the 4th episode or something. But do we have any inaccuracies that we want to nitpick for this episode? Ross?
Yeah. I mean, I'll stay away from the human side of things. I'll just concentrate on the animals because that's where I have more knowledge, probably. But certainly, I think the fact that they had to CGI these enormous wolves rather than just employ some huskies or some, other big dog breeds, is because they were trying to imply that these are dire wolves. And this is a problem, I think, which we've come across before. It's a problem it's not a problem in Game of Thrones, because Game of Thrones is sort of fantasy made up place. You can have things called dire wolves that have no relation to the real dire wolf. But dire wolves were not that much bigger than a grey wolf, like a big grey wolf. So showing them as absolutely enormous is totally wrong. So that kind of slightly annoys me. I let Game of Thrones off with it because there's no relationship between the Game of Thrones world and Pleistocene America, so that's fine. But dire wolves, about the size of a grey wolf, probably group living, so just based on the number of fossils from La Brea. So that's actually a really good site. I mean, it's quite interesting that the 2 animals we see in the pilot are the 2 animals that are most commonly found at La Brea itself. So that's dire wolves and Smilodon. And there's been lots of really interesting work done recently. So it used to be thought that dire wolves were part of the Canis genus, so the same genus as wolves, dogs, coyotes, and some other species. But some recent DNA work has shown that actually they're totally distinct. They're very basal in the canid family, and so all their kind of appearance looking like grey wolves is down to convergence. So they've actually been. They used to be their binomial used to be Canis dirus, but now they've had to kind of resurrect essentially an old genus which it was put into previously called Enoscion, and so now they're known as Enoscion dirus. So that was quite neat. The Smilodon, it looked okay. It was pretty dark. I couldn't tell, what kind of coat patterning it had. It was on its own. I mean, it looked okay, but then so did the saber-tooth in 10,000 BC, and that was an absolute shit show. So doesn't tell you anything. I always think that saber-tooth should be more gummy. That's my kind of issues, that we have information that their gums were quite extensive and were kind of tactile to help them kind of when they're making their killing bites. But every reconstruction seems to have them as just pure enamel right up to a standard mammalian gum line, which is not what happened. They have a very distinct semanto-enamel junction, which doesn't go all the way to the actual jawbone. So there must have been a lot of gum there. And yeah, I didn't spot any obvious problems. I didn't see the tail, but that's something that happens is sometimes people give saber-tooths long tails, whereas the later surviving genera of saber-tooths, Homotherium and Smilodon, had short bobtails like a lynx. And yeah, the ground sloth that appears like in a kind of brief clip at the end, I don't know what species it's supposed to be. It looks slightly too big to be kind of Mylodon or Paramylodon or what else might have been around there at that time. Well, species that we found in bones in La Brea, so Paramylodon, Mylodon, it looks a lot bigger than those, which were kind of bear-sized. This looks more elephant-sized. So I guess maybe Megatherium or Eremotherium, something like that.
What about the birds?
Oh, yeah, the birds.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about the birds, and I'll come back and tell you what I saw from the few episodes where I watched ahead, where you can see a little bit more of that giant sloth.
Yeah. The birds are sort of teratorns, which are a real thing, and also found extensively in the tar pits at La Brea. They're essentially kind of giant condors, so bigger than any surviving raptor in North America just now. Probably kind of scavenging specialists. They would have sort of soared around on the thermals, looking for dead mammoths, dead sloths, that kind of thing. And so I think we saw a bit of their profile when they were flying, and they looked very condor-like in outline in terms of the kind of wing shape and the way that they flew. So that was quite good. I sort of saw their heads briefly, and they had a weird, almost like a merganser or a smew. It looked like a toothed bill, which seemed a bit odd because birds famously don't have teeth. Apart from you see sort of sawtooths in a few species of duck, but that's it. And certainly there'd be no advantage, I don't think, for a scavenger to have those kind of keratinous teeth.
They also had sort of a crest or a comb on the top of their beak or on the top of their head, which I don't see in any of the reconstructions that I've
and certainly not in the skeleton. There's nothing to suggest a crest, a bony crest in the skeleton. They just have a skull that looks like a giant vulture or a giant kind of eagle.
Well, having watched ahead a couple of episodes, I can tell you that giant ground sloth shows up at the beginning of episode 3. It's kind of a comedy beat. It walks into their camp. They have the stockpile of food, which for some reason is just a giant pile on the ground. I'm not sure why they didn't put that into the bus or something. But they're having a fight over a chocolate bar, and then suddenly this giant sloth slowly lumbers in. Everybody runs away. It eats their entire stockpile of food and then walks away.
Oh, no.
But it's large enough that its back scrapes the bottom of the street sign that hangs over the street, which has fallen into the hole with them. I don't know that street sign is as high as it would have been since it has fallen through a hole and I guess embedded itself into the ground so that it's standing upright. But it's big enough that you might expect it might scrape the traffic signs hanging over the highway. One thing that we've talked about for sloths is that the number of toes is one of the things that differs between species. So it has 5 toes on the front limbs, and I couldn't get a great look at the back limbs, but it has at least 3 on the back limbs.
I noticed the back limbs weren't very clear as well, and it was hard to tell whether they'd correctly put them on their sides. So we talked before about how sloths walk on the sides of their feet. Their kind of feet are rotated, almost 90 degrees to what it is in most species, and so their toes are mostly off the ground completely. It was hard to see whether they'd actually done that rotation in the animation or not.
Yeah, they definitely didn't. They were definitely walking flat on the soles of their back feet.
That's bad.
So I was thinking, based on the size, it must be Megatherium, right?
Yeah, that would make sense. I think Eremotherium's not found that far north. It's mainly South American and possibly Central American. Megatherium is found that far north. I don't think there's many examples of it from La Brea. I could be wrong about that.
How many animals have been found at La Brea? How many species?
Lots. Let me seamlessly find a paper.
While you're looking for that,
we
can just mention for the Teratornis. Now, it is pretty neat that all the animals that they have, at least in this first few episodes, are animals that were found at La Brea. For the Teratornis, it says like 100 individuals or 100 specimens is what Wikipedia says for the Teratornis. I don't know if that means individuals or just like 100 separate bones. For the dire wolves, I think over 400 individuals have been found at La Brea. I think the dire wolves are one of the most common species found there, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think they are the most common, and with saber-tooth second. Okay, so some numbers. So I'm looking here at a paper I have by Leslie Marcus from 1960, a census of the abundant large Pleistocene mammals from Rancho La Brea. And so in terms of numbers, there's, lots. So in terms of minimum numbers, like for Paramylodon harlani, which is one of the ground sloths, about 76. Nothrotherium shistensi, that's the Shasta ground sloth, 22. Dire wolf, 1,646.
Ooh.
Holy cow.
American lion, 76. Smilodon, 1,029. Camelops cisternus, that's yesterday's camel, 36. Brea meryx minor, that's an extinct form of pronghorn, 34. Bison antiquus, an extinct form of bison, 159. And Equus occidentalis, extinct form of horse, 130. So that's just the large mammals, and obviously there'd be other small mammals as well, things that maybe not quite so charismatic or intensely researched. But yeah, that gives you a kind of overview. Like many kind of trap sites and tar pit sites, very carnivore heavy. So lots of entrapments of carnivores and not very many of herbivores, just because of the way it happens. You have maybe one herbivore getting stuck, starts to make a noise or smell, and then one predator or a pack of predators come in, they get stuck. Then the cycle continues. So now there's the smell of the original herbivore and the dead carnivores as well, and more keep piling in until there's none left in the surrounding area, perhaps. But yeah, I'll see if I can find any other information. I think there is a paper on the birds of La Brea as well. Let me just bring that up.
Have any humans been found in La Brea?
They have, yeah. There's the La Brea skull, which is, I think, Holocene in age. So it's a bit younger than the Pleistocene mammals that are there. And I think they found a few artifacts as well. And it's unsure as to whether, was this a natural occurrence? Did somebody actually get trapped in the tar pits in the same way that all these saber-tooths and mammoths and things did?
Actually,
I didn't mention that paper didn't mention mammoths. I wonder why that was. Because mammoths have definitely been found in La Brea.
Maybe after 1960 when the paper was written.
Well, I doubt that. I'm just trying to see. So in the census of birds from La Brea, you've got lots of. I'm not so good on my bird binomials, but some crows. You've got lots of turkey as well. Some California condor. You've got various kind of falcons and hawks and things like that. Some eagles, and then the teratorns as well. I wonder if there's a separate paper that looks at the mammoths from, because there's definitely mammoth and mastodon, I'm fairly sure, from La Brea.
Did you mention in your recap that there was a man at the end?
Oh no, I didn't. There is a man.
Yeah, at the last scene, the camera kind of is looking out from outside, so like out by the woods into the campsite area, and we see a Pleistocene person standing there, and they're wearing their furs with the fur on the outside, just watching the mess and the modern humans, what they're doing.
I found a slightly more recent paper, which is by Lillian Spencer from 2003, and it's just looking at one of the pits from La Brea, so pit 91, and it's a bit more in depth. So you've also got the current surviving species of pronghorn. You've got white-tailed deer. You've got peccaries. You've got grey fox, bobcat, short-faced bear, brown bear, tapirs, and mastodon as well, just from that pit. So yeah, it's quite a wide range.
In episode 2, we saw in the look ahead at the end of our pilot episode, we get introduced to camels.
Mm.
And this is also where we find out that, I don't know if you mentioned this Australian stoner guy who's just laughing to himself when we get introduced to him. Turns out he is a grad student who is studying anthropology. He's doing his master's in anthropology, working at La Brea. Which is a little strange because he knows everything about all these animals, and he's working at La Brea, where we've just established there are not a lot of human remains, lots of animal remains, but he is an anthropology grad student. But we find out his backstory when he is helping the girl whose father was eaten by wolves. He's helping her try and find her father's body so she can give him a proper burial. And as they're walking around, they come across a herd of camels, which is running towards a tar pit. And he, being a grad student who works at La Brea, knows, oh no, these camels are going to get stuck in the tar pit. So he goes and runs and yells at them and prevents them from running straight into the tar. And he tells the girl he's with that he just saved all those camels because they were going to get stuck in the tar pits, just like at the La Brea tar pits. And then he has a eureka moment where he's like, wait a minute. Last year, we just dug up 12 camels that got stuck in the tar pits. Those are the exact same 12 camels, and I just changed history by making them not get stuck in the tar pits. I don't know how he knew that those are the exact same 12 camels.
He's prevented his own PhD project. He's kind of ruined his own kind of research area.
All his data just disappears in the future.
Yeah, plenty of students would maybe appreciate that if they could go back in time and prevent their thesis from being started before it could begin.
So anyway, from episode 2 onwards, Australian stoner Scott becomes our exposition machine. He's the one who knows all the animals. He can explain everything to everybody, like, these are extinct, right? And so he's the second person to figure out that they are, in fact, 10,000 years in the past, whereas Eve did it in the first episode when she realized they were in Hollywood, even though the city wasn't there.
And do these people not talk to each other?
A lot of them go off on their own for little side quests variously.
Which makes total sense when you've got saber-toothed cats and giant wolves and 6-ton sloths and short-faced bears and American lions. Do you see any American lions? That would be cool.
I didn't see any in the first 4 episodes. Yeah. It seems like we get one new animal each episode, so I didn't see any mammoths
based on the CGI
mastodons. Yeah. Do you know what I do know from reading reviews on the internet is by the time we get to season 3, we get dinosaurs.
What? Really?
But it's because they come through the time portal. It's more timey-wimey stuff happens and stuff gets starting to suck through.
That's not so bad. I'll let them off with that.
Yeah, like the animals they're doing are accurate to La Brea. So far, they're very accurate. Like they're choosing all animals that are specifically known from La Brea. But the implication is that by the time you get to the 3rd season, Pleistocene animals aren't interesting, so you got to ramp it up with dinosaurs, even though it doesn't make any sense to suck dinosaurs. Out of all of the animals throughout all of Earth's history, dinosaurs are like the most famous monsters, so it's got to be those, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have high hopes, but having heard that,
I feel like worse.
Wasting half an hour on this or 50 minutes on this was, can't believe you watched more than one episode, Josh. That's above and beyond.
Yeah, seriously. It would be such a strange, realization or decision to make to think that you've gone through time travel. But then I guess what's the alternative? Like, what is it that they thought? So they know that they fell through this thing. So is it that they've landed on the inside of the Earth and the inside of the Earth happens to have a whole nother environment and sky and everything? Or did they think that they were on a different planet?
Or that they've died and gone to Pleistocene heaven?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But you'd have to come up, yes, it's going to be confusing. But when you see, a giant sloth and a saber-tooth, that's going to hopefully cause you to do some thinking. I don't know. But yeah, I hated everyone in this, I think, pretty much, apart from Izzy. She was the only one that I didn't hate instantly upon hearing them talk.
Yeah, the acting was strained. But pilots are usually the worst. So did the acting get better, Josh, in the other episodes, or no?
Oh, no, we get this new character who's another pilot who flies a drone or flies a weird space age machine into the fracture and ends up trying to rescue all the people there. But his acting is the woodiest of the bunch.
Oh, no.
He's been in some other things, so he's not an unknown actor. I can't remember what else he was in, but I thought he was not very good. I don't think the acting improves very much. So we have this wedding ring, which the ex-husband finds, even though like it makes sense to us because we already know they're in the past. But when he goes to look for it, he doesn't have an idea that they're in the past. So you're right, Ross. It doesn't really make any sense why he goes to that location to try and look for something.
But he was looking for the sign, right? So he said that he saw the street sign underneath it. So
yeah, the sign for he saw her and the sign for Wilshire Boulevard and the stone with the handprint symbol on it.
So if he is digging for the sign, that to me says that he does think that there's something timey-wimey happening, that he's jumped to that conclusion very quickly.
But there's no good reason for us to think that, though?
No, there isn't. Then for him to make that assumption,
except for his crazy visions, which he thinks that she's still alive, and he's seen the Terratorns. But I mean, it's also, that stone. They're saying that stone with the handprint on it has been there for 10,000 years in the middle of LA. Yeah. I mean, that's also
a painted
preposterous.
Handprint.
Yeah.
So he finds her wedding ring. Luckily, he's digging a giant hole and somehow finds a wedding ring on a chain in that. This is why in archaeology we sift everything, because it'd be very hard to find something that small without sifting. But whatever, he finds it. That ring becomes critical to them figuring out exactly when they are, because do you know what they do with that ring in the second episode?
They carbon date it.
They carbon date it.
Of course they do.
They carbon date it to 10,000 years ago. So should we explain why that doesn't make any sense?
I mean, I don't think we need to, do we? It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, unless it's got... No, it just doesn't make any sense. Unless it'd be
a diamond...
Unless
a diamond is made of carbon.
Yeah. Maybe it'd been eaten by a woodchuck, and they found it within the stomach of a woodchuck. Then they could date the woodchuck, and that would tell you it was 10,000 years ago. But no, you can't carbon date a diamond. Oh God.
Okay, just to be clear, you can't carbon date something that isn't made of carbon. So they can't date the ring itself. They'd have to date the diamond. But carbon dating has a maximum age range of about 50,000 years. So anything older than 50,000 years, you can't date. The diamond itself is, I don't know how old diamonds are, like a billion years old.
Yeah.
So the diamond is too old to date, but regardless, no part of it would give you the date of when it fell on the ground.
No.
It would tell you when the diamond was made. Maybe. I mean, you wouldn't be able to use carbon dating for that, but I mean, that's what technically it could tell you.
Could you carbon date like a factory diamond, like a lab grown diamond, where you like take somebody's ashes and compress them into a diamond? Could you carbon date that?
I would assume
that's an interesting question. Yeah, I think you would, because the carbon you're using comes from somebody who's been part of the carbon cycle while they were alive. So it will have the standard atmospheric ratio of carbon 14 to carbon 12. So yeah, maybe you should.
How do you sample things for carbon dating? Like, can you sample the carbon out of the diamond using whatever method you would normally use to extract the carbon from your object? Because the diamond is extremely hard.
I think you could. I mean, there's all sorts of ways. So generally with bone, they're kind of date collagen, which is the protein in bone, which is easy to kind of separate out from your stuff, and then they do some fancy stuff on it. And use like these special accelerometers to date it. Back in the day, they used to do a bit more kind of low tech, and they would essentially get a carbon-rich part, a bone or whatever, and they would combust it, I think, to produce carbon dioxide, and then once they had the carbon dioxide, that's what they would then measure the radioactivity off to work out the age. So that's something you could probably do with the diamond, sort of laser ablate it or something to produce CO2 from the carbon of the diamond. And maybe that's it. Maybe her ring was made from the ashes of Izzy's leg or something. I don't know.
But then that still wouldn't be 10,000 years old.
Well,
no, that's right. That would be modern.
Yeah,
it would come up with the same ratio as. Oh, but then it would, because it's been sitting in the ground for 10,000 years, so it would have decayed. It wouldn't give you an accurate date, but it would give you a date of over 10,000.
Yeah, so if her ring was a lab-grown, is it called lab-grown? What do you call a lab-grown diamond?
Yeah, I think that's what you call it.
If it's a lab-grown diamond, it actually might have worked.
Yeah. I'm sure that's what the writers were thinking.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's what the scientist, he goes in, I think it's episode 2, he goes to some scientist and he is like, I need you to carbon date this. And he is like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I can't remember. He says something that convinces him. And he's like, okay, give me a few hours. What? I'm sure that's what he was thinking when he gave him a diamond ring and he's like, carbon date this. And the first thing he thinks is, yeah, I can do this. No questions asked.
And also, a few hours, you'd never get a carbon date in that amount of time. It takes months.
Yeah.
Does it take months just because, like, the way that I'm familiar with doing this is you package your samples and you put them in the mail and then you, like, wait for them to get mailed to the lab that can do it. If you were to literally walk to the guy who's doing it, how long does it take the actual guy doing it to...
Well, there's usually a massive backlog. So, I mean, I used to... When I was doing my PhD,
he's expediting it. It's really important. It's for the military. If you're just bypassing that backlog, how long does the actual process take?
I think the actual process itself is still fairly involved. I mean, you've got to do a whole bunch of stuff with some very expensive machinery, and you also have to. You can't just do a sample on its own. You have to kind of fill up the spaces. I mean, yeah, I guess technically, if you had infinite money and infinite expertise, you could probably do it in a day or two. But that's certainly not a madman coming up to you wanting to date their diamond ring. He'd be like, yeah, sure, buddy, whatever. Just give it to me and then I'll have a security escort you out.
Yeah. It has like the stamp of a modern jewelry store on it. And
it would do. It would have a hallmark, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe they would just take his money and say, yeah, it's couldn't date it. I mean, there's been plenty of times when I've asked for carbon dates and they haven't been able to date stuff, but they still charge you. So
I'm waiting for some right now.
Oh.
I hope they get some dates.
I'm going to have to shoot off, guys, but it feels like we've got a reasonable amount out of there.
Yeah, there's not really that much to talk about, right?
No.
Yeah, I think we're close enough to the end here. Last thing we should mention is that the local person, the Stone Age person, who is, as far as I can tell, a pretty white European-looking kind of guy.
Yeah.
That's not right.
I didn't watch far enough ahead to meet any new people, but I think it's in episode 4, they come across a village which has, like, sort of stone masonry walls and, like, thatched straw roofs. And I don't know what structures would have looked like in this region 10,000 years ago. So I don't really know what to comment on that. I wasn't paying too much attention by the time I got to episode 4. I was starting to zone out quite a bit.
I mean, there's not even many permanent structures from anywhere from that time period, really. It's all very mobile stuff. Or, temporary, like maybe things like the mammoth skull shelters from the Ukraine that they found from about that time period. But they're certainly not, I wouldn't have thought they'd be making permanent structures from stone. I mean, what would be the point? They're a mobile people. And they're certainly not, Western European looking. They would have been the ancestors of Native Americans come over the Bering Land Bridge, so they would have had sort of, I guess, Asian, Chukchi, Siberian features, that kind of thing. And it's not like there aren't Native American actors that could have
played that
a better job.
Yeah, they did like a fit-looking Santa guy instead.
The problem with commenting on this right now is that this is a timey-wimey Lost style mystery show. And so there's a distinct possibility. We do have evidence that there are more sinkholes that had opened up. That's why the guy had crashed his plane and had these visions in the first place, because he was involved in an earlier sinkhole. Right. So it's possible that we have other people from America that went back in time previously that had been living there. So it's possible that he's actually an American who has settled into this place.
And grown a beard.
That would have been an interesting storyline.
It might be the storyline because, like I said, I haven't watched past episode 4. So it's distinctly possible that this is the storyline. I'm sure someone in the YouTube comments will tell us.
Yeah. I'm not going to lose any sleep.
So final thoughts on this episode?
Pretty terrible. I think just very soapy, very cliched. And just, I didn't like anyone in it. I didn't care about anyone apart from Izzy. And just quite terrible.
Yes. I was not motivated to watch another episode.
Let alone 3 or 4.
I might watch the rest of it in the background while I'm playing Minecraft or something just to see what happens.
You're such a masochist. I can't believe it.
This isn't one of the worst things we've watched. This is a bland American drama. It's nothing special, but it's not uniquely bad, I thought.
Bland.
Yeah,
if it was a flavor, bland. It would be grey.
Yeah. Which is like so surprising because you have quite a bit to work with in that storyline, I would say.
Yeah, how have they made time travel and Pleistocene animals boring? It's just not right.
They could have even made it more of a comedy series, I think, too. That might have made things a little bit easier if they had that other way to go with the comedy.
Yeah. If they had like killer sloths like Futurama did.
Yeah.
If you've been enjoying Screens of the Stone Age, get in touch with us. Follow us on Twitter at SOTSA_podcast and on Facebook at SOTSA podcast, or send us an email to screensofthestoneage@gmail.com. Screens of the Stone Age is supported by the Paleoanthropological Society of Canada. Find out more at pasc-scpa.ca.